Today, I have Chris Cochran joining me. He's a rare breed, someone I deem as being equal parts creator and technologist. With an impressive background in cybersecurity, he's now at the forefront of bringing cutting-edge human insights to tech professionals. In addition to being the creative director at Exonius, he's the co-founder of Hacker Valley Media, a platform that delivers podcasts and other multimedia to cybersecurity and tech professionals. As the host of multiple podcasts, Chris inspired my own entry into the podcasting world, and I haven't looked back since. I'm really thankful for his guidance. In this episode, we concentrate on how tech professionals can harness the evolutions of Web3, which we'll get into. Related, we also explore how mid-career tech professionals can unleash their creative side to deliver value and create a livelihood. And we also discuss a fresh take on education and how to credentialize yourself going forward. I'm really excited to deliver this episode to you all. And as always, if you enjoy this show, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps me serve others. Thank you, and please enjoy. Welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. I am your host, Matthew Doan. Today's organizations are powered by digital capabilities, cloud, data science, cybersecurity, and much more. To be competitive, we must have tech-savvy leaders steering the ships. But these people don't come out of thin air. We must develop them. This show is for the technical experts of the world, those brave souls that feel unheard and lost in the crowd, but know they were born to lead. We need you to rise, to become impactful digital leaders. In these episodes, we help you undergo a self-transformation, developing the mindset and skill set that'll massively enhance your abilities, influence, and career potential. We take a different approach, pulling in lessons from philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and history to enrich the professional and personal aspects of your life. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Now, let's dig in. Chris, welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. This is exciting.
Oh man, we're going to get into some really good stuff for our audiences here today. So to get right into it, I know you have a very accessible public profile, and we'll get into some of your mission later and people can figure out what you're all about. But I want to go behind the scenes a little bit. What's something formative from your past that drives you today?
To be honest with you, my core emotional conflict, as my coach would say, is that not having my value be seen and reflected in others. Quite often when I was a kid, I was counted out. No one said that I was going to amount to anything. You know, typical teenage years, people made fun of me in middle school. And so I almost found it my mission to find the value in others. And that's what still drives me to this day.
So I imagine that shows up in a lot of what you're delivering from a content perspective. And I know we'll dive into that. So we'll keep that thread going as we go. So on that note, you have a very unique creative journey, I'd say, for someone in the quote technology world, immersed in cybersecurity for many years, the intelligence world. Obviously, that's got a lot that drives you. So a lot of people wouldn't necessarily taking a quote creative leap is a natural extension. So would love to understand, first off, for our audience, a lot of technologists out there, What does creator mean to you?
I mean, creator, the term is so broad, but I think that's what makes it special. To me, a creator is anyone that can take something that's in their mind, and that's the only place it exists, and then bring it to fruition. So whether it's a book or a movie, a technology, maybe even a piece of machinery, all these things that people dream of and they create, that's being a creator. You're taking something that didn't exist before and you're bringing it to life.
That's really special. And you were hinting at a lot of mediums that can happen. So I think you might think creator, artist, paintbrush, and it's so much more than that. You can design and build what's in your head in different ways based on what you're comfortable with. So I'd suggest for people that we talk to often, that can be through words. It could be audio, video, much like we're doing right now. It could be code, developing apps, sketches.
Exactly.
There's so many ways to create, to take the ideas in your head and I'd say publicly build and ship them. Getting them out there to the world, right?
100%.
Yeah. So that's what you've been doing these last few years through Hacker Valley and all the related podcasts and content endeavors in your new role right now as a creative director. How has this shift towards this creative mode changed you personally?
Oh my goodness. You're opening up a can of worms there. So me personally, I mean, it's completely changed my life. I wouldn't literally be sitting where I'm sitting without doing any creating. I wouldn't be the person I am today without doing this creator stuff, because I found that my medium of podcasting, this allows me to go deep into the minds of people all around the world, different backgrounds, different experiences, and I get to ask them really tough and insightful questions. And I feel like if I was just a regular person on the street and I started asking these deep questions just out of the blue, like people are like, get out of here, weirdo, what the heck are you asking me this stuff for? But that the podcast realm, that gives me an excuse to do that. And I'm one of those people. I remember, I think it was episode 2 where we talked about layer 8, but we talked about it from the standpoint of patching the human and getting better, because, you know, we always talked about layer 8 as, oh, it must be a layer 8 issue, so they're a stupid user. But really, we were like, you know, let's talk about patching humans in a good way, making people better. And so I am one of those people that when I hear something, when I have a conversation, when I see something on TV that strikes me in a certain way, it automatically kind of like is added to my program. It's automated to Chris, and I change and I grow with every conversation that I have. And honestly, I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I'm a better citizen of the United States. I'm a better citizen of the world because of the content that I've been creating, because I'm talking to these people that have all these interesting ideas and experiences and philosophies. And I just take those on as my own.
No, that's beautiful, Chris. It makes me think of the funnel that's likely going with you right now, where you're going to have a lot of consumption. You need to have a lot of inputs in order to come up with creative, useful outputs for the world and put them in a way that others haven't seen. So whether it's stretching into realms of psychology or human nature and understanding that in order to give a message to a technology community on how they can be better leaders or how they can just be more successful in their career trajectory. I can see how that mind expansion is happening, and it's coming to fruition through your podcasting in many cases.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. So here's a tricky situation. I work with clients a lot from a coaching perspective on this, is this balance of, so say you've got a corporate job, say you're a data scientist or you're a cyber threat hunter or something to that effect, right? And you've got these other creative impulses. You have this more authentic self, things you want to put out there to the world, whether it's related to your job or not. How do you wrestle with the dynamic of being in a corporate job, yet wanting to be your authentic self at the same time? Is there like a marrying of the two? Do they need to be rather separate? How do you view that problem?
Yeah, everyone's journey is a bit different. Some folks, they're a creator on Instagram. Maybe they're a painter, maybe they're a dancer, maybe they're a musician, and they just create there. But on LinkedIn, they're just technologist, cybersecurity practitioner. But also don't feel like that those are hard and fast rules. I tend to blend everything that I'm interested in across different profiles. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I'm interested in art a little bit. You'll see I'm interested in leadership development stuff. You see I'm interested in technology, emerging technology. There's all sorts of different things. I feel pretty open and confident at this point to share what interests me in whatever medium that it is. But I think it didn't start that way. I had to develop a certain confidence about myself, a certain vulnerability, because one thing that you'll realize when you produce content, number one, your content isn't for everybody. And number two, you are definitely not for everybody. There are going to be people that don't like you. There are going to be people that don't understand you. So as long as you go into those endeavors knowing that, and you put yourself out there and you tweak and tune and try different things, you experiment, then I think you'll be okay. So you can keep them separate if you want, but you could also marry the two.
Oh, that's a really great way to put it there, Chris. It makes me think from a philosophy standpoint. There's a great quote from Zig Ziglar. I think he said, "Don't be a wandering generality, be a meaningful specific." The idea of getting into that target zone of who you want to serve, because you can't be for everyone. Right. And the many billions of people on this earth that are connected to the internet have endless choices.
Yes.
As Wes Cow would say, one of my favorite ed tech professionals, she says, we're in a post-content age. Everything we could ever want to learn is available directly on YouTube or some other form that we can know what we want. So you, in being a quote influencer, being someone that makes a difference in other people's lives, you have to get specific. You have to get into a niche or a niche of a niche and keep diving deep. And that's where you're going to get your resonance. That's when you're going to see that you are actually impacting other people's lives, because you can't do it broadly. Right. You have to do it at the person level, right? I think that's what you're getting at.
100%.
That's awesome, man. So I'd like to take a little bit of a right turn right now. You and I have a very shared interest in Web3.
Yes.
And I know you've got a new podcast amongst several that you're running called Metaversible, and we can get to that in a second. But we're seeing these huge evolutions over the last 30 plus years, from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. And for the uninitiated, Web 1, very static.
Yep.
There was not a lot to it. You had email, you had databases and shared forums and such. Web 2 got a little bit more social. We'll call that the dynamic internet, where you saw the social platforms come online, the ability to link peer-to-peer networks, get a lot of exponential returns on maybe what you're putting out there online. And now we're getting towards Web 3.
Yes.
Where we are breaking apart the big monopolies of the social platforms and the huge companies and the huge banks. And we're seeing this decentralization of finance, of entrepreneurship, of being able to be a creator that can make money from their ideas. And it's so much more. I won't try to dissect everything that is Web3, but just as a note, we'll put it in the show notes. People need to go learn about what Web3 is.
Yeah.
From NFTs to how crypto is being used, to something how the underlying technology of Ethereum is powering all sorts of decentralized organizations and applications. Like, we could unpack that, but I choose not to at this moment. We'll link people to that. I'm curious though, as you are someone who's equally passionate, I think, about Web3, what value does that bring to people in our communities who are working in the tech space? Like, how should they be thinking about Web3 and what it could mean for them?
So let me paint a picture for you. So before the Marine Corps, I was a dancer, and I would literally go into the city of Atlanta with a friend. Usually we would put a hat down or a cardboard box, and we would dance on the street for money, and we would dance the entire day. And sometimes it was just enough to eat. And so, of course, we used to put out videos and things like that, but the videos were always out there for free. That was almost like our marketing, for lack of a better term. And so we would get these gigs here and there. But I feel like with this new Web3, with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, this new economics that you can bring to the creators, it's going to completely change the game, because now you have these things called smart contracts. And if you dabble in Ethereum or you dabble in Solana, whatever your coin of choice is, smart contracts enables you to, in perpetuity, get royalties on the things that you create. But a lot of folks are looking at just static art right now. Maybe they're looking at GIFs and they're going to audio and things like that. But now those are just the initial applications for NFTs. They're going to go above and beyond anything that we can even comprehend today. This is just the building blocks. This is the technology that's going to enable the future of the economy. And people are just starting to think about the things that this technology can solve. So we're in very nascent stages. People are like, oh, I don't want a personal profile picture. That's crazy. I mean, some people find them fascinating, but I think we are really in the early stages of what it's really going to mean for everybody around the world.
And what would you say for someone who's working in the corporate space, going through their 9 to 5, how would they start to just understand and get into the space? Is it just go learn and see for a while, observe, or do you have any other starting points on how people should start to evolve themselves into it?
I feel like you're just trying to open up every can of worms that I possibly have in my brain. So we actually created a framework for exploration. And this is exploration in life, career, hobbies, sports, whatever you want to call it. And it's the exist framework. The EX is explore. So like dabbling in different things, like figuring out, oh, this is interesting. Let me dabble in this for a little bit. Or I found this to be interesting in cybersecurity, but I want to learn more about the threat hunting aspect of cybersecurity. And once you explore, you then immerse. So right now I'm like in this NFT Web3 immersion. So I'm listening to Snow Crash, which is a fiction book. I'm listening to podcasts. Tim Ferriss just had a great podcast with two gentlemen that were pretty deep into Web3 and early crypto. I'm exposing myself to this project, this Metaversible project, because now we just did our first pre-launch for our very first NFT project. I'm minting things. I'm playing with audio minting right now. There's so many things that could be done. So I'm immersing myself in it. Then you go from that immersion to study, which is the S. This is the active practicality of whatever it is that you're looking to do. So if I wanted to create something, maybe I work on that project every single day. This is me practicing. There was an old study that was done where they were looking at sculptors, and they said, Group A, we want you to make a perfect sculpture, and Group B, we want you to make as many sculptures as you possibly can. And then that final sculpture will be the thing that we compare against Group A. And what they found was that Group B, the one that had that repetition over and over and over, finding what works, what doesn't work, they subjectively and maybe even objectively had a better sculpture than Group A. And so what they're finding is like, you have to have that repetition. You have to have that failure. You have to have those reps in whatever it is that you're doing in order to become good. And then that T is that translate or transform. So anything that we find of value, anything that we have spent our time in, you're doing it right now. You're taking everything that you've learned over your entire career and you're doing a podcast and you're talking to people. You're helping people out. So that's translating everything that you've learned to them. You could be teaching kids. You could teach your peers. You could teach other folks looking to get into the space. Or you can transform it. You can take what is existing already and bring it up to another level. These are the masters of their craft. These are the folks that get into podcasting and they say, what if we did podcasting different? And they just bring it up to another level. And so that's what I feel like people should do with anything. So if you're interested in Web3, start with that exploration. What is it about Web3 that speaks to you? Is it virtual reality? Is it the NFT space? Is it solely on the crypto? Then you immerse yourself. Like, where are the Discords? Where are the different forums? The podcasts? What are all the things that you can surround yourself with to learn by osmosis? Going into study, who are the folks doing the research? What can you learn about the marketing of Web3 technologies? What can you learn about the research that's going behind it? And then ultimately taking it and translating it for other people or transforming it into something else built on your experiences. So that's how I would look at it.
Wow, that's a really applicable framework to almost any situation. I certainly want to link to that, but I could feel the power in that, right? It's a simple framework. It's a movement from left to right, from E all the way to the T of exist. But it helps you distill the chaos that is constant noise, right? We're drinking from a fire hose whenever we get online, and we don't know how to methodically explore something that's interesting to us and get to skill, develop mastery, build new opportunities in our future. If we're just haphazard and all over the place, we're not going to have any sort of intentionality to getting where we want to go. So that's a beautiful framework you guys have developed.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's go to education for a moment. Now, there are a lot of people that are listening to this, my audience, your much larger audience, of course. When you've got say you got Gen Z and Gen Alpha right now, there's a lot of movement out there, and I'll talk about cybersecurity as the example because you and I have a big background there. There's a lot of getting people into that pipeline. There's a lot of, we need those skills, and there's a lot of frameworks and associations and initiatives out there for that. You and I, we're both, in our 30s, kind of would call well into our career, making progress, all that stuff. For people more like us who have had some experience, maybe they're like a mid-level manager in a company, just as an example, they're in the tech space. They were taught to go get your degrees, go get your certifications, climb the ladder, keep going step by step. I'm curious, given that we're recording here at the end of 2021, is that still the right approach for people that are more mid-career? How should they be thinking about educating themselves, given all the swirl that's happening right now in tech?
Yeah, I think, and this is the answer that everyone loves, it depends. So it depends, number one, on how you learn as a person. I would say that it would probably be almost impossible to become a doctor without getting your 4-year degree. So also if there's like checks that you have to do to get to a certain place, then you definitely have to check those boxes. But think about how you learn as a person. I was not a great traditional student. I got my degree, but it was honestly, for me, it was an act of endurance just to see if I could make it to the very end. And I did, but I did not retain, I would say, 80% of the stuff that I learned. But some people, they go to school, they have great experience, they take all that knowledge and it's locked up in their head. That's not how I tend to operate. I tend to operate more along the lines of like the mini MBA sort of philosophy that Tim Ferriss puts forward in the Tools of Titans. So what the mini MBA program is that you can modularize your own learning. So just like we were talking about, like that study, the S in the exist framework, you can piece together pieces. Like, let's say, all right, I want to get into Web3. I want to learn all about it. What is it? You can start with a YouTube video, a 10-minute YouTube video, very small investment. And then you see that, like, okay, so I have some questions. Then maybe you pivot into articles that people have written based on the questions that you had from Web3. And you're like, okay, those are pretty cool. I want a little bit of in-depth discussion. I want to hear some back and forth. So then maybe you pivot to podcasts. And you're like, okay, so I'm really interested in this aspect. Maybe there's a course online that I can take. Boom, there's a course online that you can take for a week that's really focused on NFT creation, if you want to call it that. Or if you're in cybersecurity, I'm going to get really serious about threat hunting or threat intelligence, whatever it is. There are all these little things that you can piece together to bring about your own education. One of my favorite tips that I share quite often is from Stephen Kotler's The Art of the Impossible. It's one of my favorite books about performance. And what he talks about is this 5 books of stupid. I hate the stupid part because I feel like it's actually pretty ingenious. But you basically take 5 books about whatever subject it is that you're trying to learn about. And you go through them not to retain all of the information. You go through it almost as like that immersion step. This is, what are the things that stand out to you about these books? And there's a sliding order. So it starts with the book that is the best book, the most fun book. It's the most exciting book that's out there in this particular subject. It could be fiction or nonfiction. And then as you go down, you get more esoteric, you get more abstract. You're looking at the challenges. You're looking at the future of whatever this place is. And at the end, you have this pile of lists, and it's not necessarily focused on the things that you've learned, but the things that excite you about that particular subject. And so now you have this very, very rudimentary, but generically complete stance on what the subject is all about.
That's powerful because you're choosing your own pieces that interest you amongst the subject. You're not just taking verbatim what the 400-page single book says and trying to understand that ad nauseum, but you're taking a little bit of, like, going to a buffet and picking the pieces you want, building it on your plate, and a plate that excites you and something that you're going to enjoy consuming and something that you want to do more in the future. And then, maybe I would love your take on this. You have the power to take those pieces and then remix them in your own way. And one of the things I've found is that once you take those pieces of learning, whether it's a little bit from YouTube, a little bit from a podcast or a video or from a conversation, and then you start to put it out there in a very simple way to the world in a format that you love. And by teaching, whether it's one-on-one, at scale, building in public, shipping a podcast, you're forcing yourself to codify your learning. You're forcing yourself to make sure that you're locking in the goodness, the principles that really resonated with you. And then you're bringing those to other people in a way that's maybe a little bit more accessible to the community you live within versus the abstract academic book that you pulled it all from.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And so it means so much more to you, and it just sticks that much more solidly.
Yeah. One other question I had for you in the realm of education is there's a lot, I'd say, for a push of, I'll call it sameness in tech, where we're all being asked to learn the same skills, get the same credentials, same certifications in many senses. And you have to refresh these every couple of years, whether it's some new AWS cert or some new security architecture certification, whatever it is. I'm wondering, in your mind, are those the right forms of credentials we should be leading with these days? Or are there other aspects, other ways to credentialize ourselves that we should be exploring in tech?
Yeah, this might be the most inflammatory thing I say, but this is just my opinion. Take it as you will. I feel like credentials are cool and they have their place, but nothing beats good old fashioned experience. And it doesn't even, oh, well, I can't get a job if I don't have these credentials. I'm not even necessarily talking about work experience. Just if someone came to me and they sat across from the table, and let's say I was looking for an automation engineer, and they've never done a lick. They've worked at McDonald's. They've done some work at maybe Lowe's, like a shipping manufacturer or something like that. But they come to me and they explain this 2-year-long research project that they did in automation. And this is the technologies they use. These are the challenges that they ran into. This is what they ultimately created. And I can see it on their GitHub. I'm very apt to hire that person, even though they did not necessarily have the work experience that someone else might have. But because I know that they put the time, attention, and the passion into a project like that, they've hit their head against the same challenges that people that are doing this on a day-to-day basis for their work are doing. I think that is much more valuable than a credential or a certification. But like I said, they have their place. This might be how people learn. They might need it for their job because the job required them to have these certifications. That's good, all good and gravy. There's people that like to collect certifications. Cool. That's all right with me as well. But for me personally, the most valuable thing is the willingness to learn, the willingness to fail, and putting their hands in the dirt and getting stuff done.
Yeah, so well said. And I think what I'm taking away from your answer there is to expand the notion of what a credential is. It doesn't need to be a sheet of paper. It doesn't need to be a professional stamp from an organization, but we can credentialize ourselves in different ways.
Right.
Whether it's posting things on GitHub, whether it's being able to tell a very good story of a transformative thing you've done at work. And I'd really like to just double emphasize that idea of, you said GitHub. That's one example of having a portfolio of what you've done, making that accessible. And in this day and age, when the resume is kind of like an old school thing that doesn't really apply anymore, people are going to find you for a job based on your Twitter profile. Like that's how you're going to be sought out, right? Like that sort of thing. The more you can build in public, centralize, make easily accessible, whether it's your own website or like a link tree or something to that effect, that gives people the ability to discover who you are, what you've built, and then show it off in a public manner. Man, the opportunities from that, especially in Web3, are just going to multiply like crazy.
Yep, 100%.
So we talked a little bit about security. You and I have both been in that game for a number of years. I just have a very specific question because I think you'd be a valuable source of insight here. So we're seeing lots of attacks that have happened. This is like, everyone knows about this. Grandmothers know about this. 5-year-olds know about this. It's like so commonplace. It's ridiculous. And big organizations, small organizations, and medium ones are getting more budget. They're getting more attention. You know, it's at the top of the risk agenda. Why then are organizations still struggling so mightily to deal with cybersecurity?
Because there is an extreme learning curve when it comes to cybersecurity. If you are, let's say you're a brand new startup and you have incredible technicians, incredible developers, an incredible leader, and everyone's focused and driving in the right direction of innovation, but you don't have anyone thinking about security, I wouldn't necessarily say that those folks are naive. I would just say that they didn't think about what security might mean for them from a business perspective. And this goes for companies at many different stages and ages. It really doesn't matter because it's really about just understanding what works in security, what is the most important things in security. The landscape changes. It's not a static landscape like, oh, as long as you do this, this, and this, you're good to go. It's constantly evolving. So there is a learning that has to take place when it comes to cybersecurity. So just having at least a minimum of one person that's on the C-suite level, that's on the leadership level, that's keeping an eye on what we need to do to keep the operation safe, the business safe, is where you're going to start to see that fruition that we're talking about. So yeah, it's all about education, and it's all about putting the effort into making sure that you're secure.
Yeah. And is there anything in particular, say small organizations, it's a great example, that they need in place from a leadership perspective? Are there certain types of people with certain backgrounds that might be especially effective in getting people to wake up and educate on the problem and what they can do?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the middle of writing something right now. I actually have the triangle that's sitting here in front of me, but probably can't show it because I'm doing it for Udacity. But really at the base, if you want to operate in a space, you have to get compliance. That's just the bar. That's where you set the bar. You have to do compliance. If you're dealing with digital finance information, you have to have PCI compliance, right? These are the things you just have to do. Then you move up into another layer where you're starting to secure your innovation. You're making sure that everything that you're doing from an innovation standpoint, you're taking security into your mind when it comes to this stuff. And so you could be the CEO that's thinking like this if you don't have a security person. And then ultimately you want to get to incremental improvements, which is this is the secret to mastery, is incremental improvements over whatever it is, whether you're playing a sport, a hobby, you're building a company, just being 1% better or even 0.01% better than the company you were, the person you were yesterday. That's what really it's all about. And as long as you have somebody, just one person with that mentality from a security perspective, you're going to move in the right direction. And then you're going to think about what additional resources do I need to get to bring that vision to life.
So well said. Love that a lot. The 1% better. If we could just think about that versus these big sweeping transformations we're always thinking and dreaming about, those things don't stick very well. But slight incrementals change, whether it's in security operations or like asset management or understanding risks. It's game changing. Just do a little bit by bit. Do the basics, work your way up. I'd love to switch over to a little rapid fire. You game?
Let's do it.
All right. First one for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a good question. Best piece of advice I've ever received is be yourself, be authentic. It really matters because humans have this radar for BS, and people pick up on it. Have you ever run into like a salesman that you just feel was a little off? You have this like instinctual feeling about people that aren't being themselves. So be yourself, and everything else will be okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you stand out and actually get new opportunities out there too. It's a very crowded world. Love that. What about the worst piece of advice you've received?
Be normal.
Ooh.
So people have seen my career and they've seen they scratch their head like, Chris, you're ruining your career. You're going from consulting to being in a company to doing your own thing to NFTs. You're all over the place. You should just stick with your job, stick with the same company for 30 years, retire, and call it a day. And I refuse to do that. So for me, that's the worst piece of advice that I've received. But everyone out there, it's your journey. If that's what you want to do, that more power to you.
Yeah, you're not staying in a small comfort zone. You're expanding. If you got to invest early in any company, what would it be and why?
Is this a company in the past or a company
that
today?
Exists? It's existing today or has existed some point in the past.
If I had to invest in one company, it would have been probably Tesla. I like Elon. He gets a bad rap in the press, but just the way he thinks about things, I really appreciate it. And really, so it'd be more of like this portfolio of stuff rather than just Tesla. It'd be Tesla, SpaceX, all that, Solar City.
Yeah. Elon's whole brain power there.
Yeah.
If you could invent one law that everyone had to follow on this earth, what would it be?
Be empathetic.
Yeah. Why?
Because empathy is how you bring everyone together. I feel like with this digital world that we live in these days, it's easy to forget that there's a person on the other end. And whether you're talking about being online, on Twitter, being on a Zoom, even the people we work with every day, we tend to forget that they have human lives and they have human hangups and human baggage theirs honestly. And we tend to forget about that. We think about our own self-interest. Why didn't they put my project as priority? Why didn't they do the request that I had? They don't realize that this person's been underwater for the past 2.5 years. So I think if everyone just had just 1% more empathy, the whole world would be that much better.
No, I love that. That's the best answer I've heard in a long time for a question like that. All right, wrapping up here, Chris. So this is the Rising Digital Leader Show. So I like to ask this. How do you rise each day?
I rise each day by just trying to be better than Chris Cochran of yesterday, just like we were talking about. I don't get hung up on competing against other podcasters. I don't get hung up on being against other creators, other people in the NFT space. I compete against myself. And to be honest with you, that awareness just makes you that much more happy, because now you're not looking at externally, looking at what everyone else is doing. You can just sit in the satisfaction that you're better than you were yesterday, and you can continue with that momentum and just get better.
That's a game you can win. The external comparison one, no hope.
Right.
That's awesome. How can people connect with you more online?
Yeah, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Definitely reach out, connect with me. Let me know that you heard me on this show. And also, all of our stuff for Hacker Valley is at hackervalley.com. We'd love for you to follow our shows. Let us know the ones you find interesting and just join our Hacker Valley family.
Oh, man. The content you and Ron put out there is so amazing. I'm a huge fan. It's one of the big inspirations why I'm even in podcasting in the get-go. And I just wanted to say thank you, Chris, for helping give me some early inspiration into getting into this space.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. What closing message, if any, would you like to leave with our audience today?
I would say, in the Marine Corps, I learned one team, one fight. We're all working together to move forward. So find your tribe, whatever that mission that it calls to you, that purpose that you have. Work together with people, support other folks, and folks are going to support you. You are seen by somebody. Just know that. And let's get better together every single day and make this world a little bit better.
Yeah, beautiful mission there. Chris, I just wanted to thank you. I mean, this whole journey we've walked through today, you're a creative force in a world of people that don't necessarily think about that, right? We know the technology world and we follow those prescriptive paths. You're doing something different. It's trailblazing. I wanted to thank you for that. Your ventures into Web3. People, listen to Chris and where he's going with Web3, the Metaversible podcast. We'll link to that. All the things related to where the world's going in Web3. It's going to be game changing for you, especially your children too. I love your learning mindset, that whole exist framework. That's a really special way, I think, to just keep building mastery towards things that interest us in life. And just wanted to commend you on this service mentality you have. You're delivering a ton of value. You're looking at specific communities, understanding their pains and desires. And I can see you actively giving a lot of goodness and value back to those people. So thank you for all of that. This has been great today.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's kind words.
All right, man. Let's stay connected and keep growing together. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
This is your host, Matthew Doan. Thank you for listening to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Again, my mission is to help you elevate your career as a digital leader and live a thriving life. I hope this episode sparks new thinking and helps you take meaningful action in your world. If you enjoyed the experience, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed and left a 5-star review. That's it for now. Until next time, my friends, stay virtuous.